11.3 ellipse. Again, this is a chapter 11 is a conic section, so the main thing that you need to remember is the formula. So the difference between, first, if you look at the general form, the difference between the equations of the circle and an ellipse in the general form is your A and your B are different in ellipse. So A is not equal to B. In a circle, it's exactly the same thing, but A is equal to B. Right? So that's different. So if you look at in a standard form, which is where you can find out the centers and everything, that will become this x minus h squared over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared equal to 1. So ellipse and the next section hyperbola will be always equal to 1. If you can put it into a standard form, then you right away get your center h and k. And depending on your value of a and b, your ellipse will be vertical or your ellipse will be horizontal. So let's take a look at on this. If if the value of a is smaller than value of b, then the ellipse will be vertical. Okay, because if you can see that value of a is associating with x and the value of b is associating with y, so if b is bigger, then it will be what, longer on the y-axis part, so the ellipse will become vertical. And similarly, if value of a is greater than value of b, then the ellipse will be horizontal. So one main thing that you need to remember is the vertex point. Some textbooks use the minor vertex and major vertex. Right here, we just want to talk about the vertex. The vertex is where the longer axis we have. So in the vertical ellipse, the vertex will be right here, this point, and then this point. And your center will be K right here, H and K, that's the center. So therefore, since this is up and down, your vertex will become H K, but what is the difference? This distance right here is B, so it'll be plus B for the top part, and this vertex right here will be H comma K minus B, because B unit below of the center. So that's how we got this formula right here, plus or minus sign. Similarly, if it is a horizontal, this is my center right here, which is H and K, and since you are uh, talking about horizontal ellipse, the vertex will be on the major axis, the longer axis, which is these two. So this vertex is basically H plus A comma K, because you're talking about A unit away from it, and then A unit left from a center, so it'll be H minus A comma K. Okay? So that's how we got this formula right here, plus or minus on H part. So the key thing that you need to remember in this case is being able to get the standard form, because once you get the standard form, graphing everything's come out nice and neatly, right? So let's take a look at on example number 1. So example number 1 is not in standard form, because remember the standard form, my the left hand side equal to 1. So in this case, in order to make sure that it's 1, so I need to divide both sides by 144. So this will become, looks like this, equal to 1, because 144 divided by 144 is 1. So then reduce 144, right? 144 divided by 9, which will give me 16. So which is x squared is equal to 16 over 16 plus, now we know that 16 goes into 144 9 times, which is equal to 1. So if you look at more carefully according to the formula, this will become x minus 0 squared, because x squared is x minus 0 squared, over 16 is 4 to the second power, plus y minus 0 squared, 9 is 3 squared equal to 1. So from here, we know our center and we know our A and B, right? So the center is 0, 0. That's what they're asking for, right? Center, that will be 0, comma 0. And then we want to find out the vertex. So probably a lot of times you will forget the vertex formula for the test. So what I want you to do is graph it first, and then after that you talk about the vertex point from the graph. That way it's easier, right? So let's graph it first. So when I graph it, my center will be at 0, 0. Okay? My center will be at 0, 0. And then you count your A and B. Remember, this is your A is 4, your B is what? 3. So A is associating with the X, so therefore it will be what? For left and right. So it will be 4 unit to the left of the center, 4 unit to the left of the center. And then B is going up and down, associating Y, so going up and down. So it will be 3 units up from the center and then 3 units down from the center. So once you see that the longer axis is the horizontal, this time we are getting what? A horizontal ellipse, if you can see that, right? Although it is not very unique. So from here, then I can talk about my vertex, which is my vertex will be this point right here and then this point right there. So which is 4, comma 0 and then negative 4, comma 0, because these are major axes. So it's very important that you remember this, the standard form, because the standard form will help you to do everything. Graphing, vertex, center. Good. So let's take a look at our next one. So this one is x plus 3 squared over 4 is 2 squared plus y minus 5 squared over 16 is 4 squared equal to 1. So this helps us to get the center. Remember, the center is x minus h and then y minus k. So this portion, I want to rewrite it this part. I don't want to write it this way. For the plus sign, we can look at it as a minus a negative 3. So therefore, my center will be negative 3, 5. Are you all following so far? And then vertex. Again, vertex will be as usual. We're going to graph it first and then try to find out where is the major axis vertex. So center 3, negative 3, 5, which is going to be right here, right? Negative 3 and 5, right there. And then you're going to count left and right, up and down of the center, from the center to get ellipse. So 2, my A is 2 and my B is 4. So therefore, 2 unit left and right of the center, and then 4 unit up and down of the center. So from here, you can basically clearly see that this ellipse is a vertical ellipse, right? Vertical ellipse. So therefore, I can talk about the vertex, which is this point and that point, and my vertex will be negative 3, 1, and another one is what? Negative 3, 9. That will be my vertex. Now we got center, we got vertex, and then we got the graph also. Let's take a look at the last two example, which is not given to you in standard form, but they give you in general form. So you need to do the completing the square like in circle to get into the standard form. So first question is asking you to write in standard form and then find the center, then find the vertex, and then sketch. So standard form, 6x squared plus 12x, because I'm going to put all the x term together, plus 4y squared minus 32y equal to, I subtract 34 on both sides. Now I'm going to try to add a number for x and add a number for y to get the answer. So here's the part. To add the number, our leading coefficient must be 1. So it cannot be 6 and then it cannot be 4 right there. So what we need to do is we need to factor it out from each group, right? So that we can find out what number to add. So factoring out 6 from the first group, that will give me x squared plus 2x. And then factoring out from the second group 4, that will give me y squared minus 8y equal to negative 34. Now we need to figure out what number to add. So as usual, it will be b divided by 2 and square it. Okay, b divided by 2 and square it. So for the x part, b divided by 2 and square it, that is basically 2 divided by 2 and square, which is going to be equal to 1 squared equal to 1. So we are adding 1 right there. For the y part, b divided by 2 and square it, that will be negative 8 divided by 2 and square, which is negative 4 squared. That gives me positive 16. So we are adding positive 16 right there. Now, this is a portion, but you need to really be careful, okay? Because a lot of time, the mistake is right here. Let me show it to you. If you are adding 1 to both sides for the x and then for the y, right? Yeah. For x, you add 1. So a lot of time, the mistake is you will automatically add 1 on the right-hand side also. That's where the mistake is. The reason why is because actually you are not adding 1. Look, because we factor 6 out, when you distribute it, you are actually what? 1 times 6, you are adding 6 to the left-hand side instead of 1. So this is how you want to remember, okay, for the writing part so that you will not ever forget. So when I add on the right-hand side, I'm basically adding 6 times 1, and then I'm adding, for the y part, it will be 4 times, because if you distribute it 4, it will be 4 times 16. Those are the number that you are adding on both sides. So finally, once you get that, this will be 6, because of this is a perfect square trinomial, it will be x plus 1 squared plus 4 times y minus 4 squared is equal to, let's simplify using the calculator on the for the right hand side, right? Negative 34 plus 6 plus 64, because 6 times 4 is 64. So that gives me 36. Finally, I can divide both sides by 36, because remember, for the ellipse, the right hand side must be equal to 1. So I divide both sides by 36. This gives me this. Simplifying it, 6 and 36, when you reduce it, it will become x plus 1 to the second power over 6, and then plus, and then y minus 4 squared goes into 9 times. That is equal to 1 right here. So now from here we can see that it will be x minus a negative 1 squared over square root of 6 squared plus, because square root of 6 squared, when you square and square root, it cancels out, right? And y minus 4 squared, 3 squared equal to 1. Yes, this example is a little bit tough, but that shows you everything that can happen. So now my center, this is one of my answer that we want, right? The standard form. Now what we want is center. So from here we can find out our center, which is what? My x is negative 1, my y is 4. That's my center. And then the next thing that is asked you to find is the vertex, right? And remember, vertex, we don't need to do it right now. We can graph it first and then talk about the vertex. Okay? So the center is -1 full, which is -1 full right here. And then what you're gonna do is, like, my a in this case is square root of 6. My b is 3, right? My b is 3. So that means b is going up and down 3 units. So 1, 2, 3 unit up and then go down 3 units. And now we're going to take care of that square root of 6, which is square root of 6 is associated with x, so it will go left and right of the center. So use your calculator and then compute square root of 6. So that should give you, what happened? So I don't know what happened. So this should give you the square root of 6 is 2.44. So we will approximate as 2.5. So you're going to move 2.5 unit to the left and you're going to move 2.5 to the right. Okay. So 2.5 to the right, which is right here, and then 2.5 to the left, which is right here. So those will help us to get the ellipse. And you can see that this time the ellipse is a vertical, so my center will, my vertex will be from the center -1, right? And then this point right here, which is going to be 7, and this point right there is my vertex, which is -1 and 1. So finally, we answer all of these questions that they want. So let's try the second example. That way you will get better. And my concern and then your concern should be at this point when you're adding the number. You don't, because usually we forgot to multiply by the factor that we factor out all the way in the front. That's the extra attention that you need to pay when you do homework problem. Okay. So let's continue on the second problem. Okay, let's look at this. So first I'm gonna have to complete the square, so I'm gonna rearrange all the x value. So 4x squared minus 16x plus y squared minus 6y equal to subtracting 9 on both sides. And then factor, so for this portion, for the x part, I need to factor 4 out. For the y part, I don't need to factor anything. So this will become 4 times x squared minus 4x plus, I don't need to factor anything, so it will be just y squared minus 6y and then equal to -9. Now let's decide what number to add for the x part and then for the y part. Right, let me copy this down first. So let me erase a little bit on the left hand side, so that way we can use as a side work right here. So for the x part, okay, for the x part, b divided by 2 and then square it, which is in this case will be -4 divided by 2 and square, which is -2 square. That will become 4. So we are adding plus 4 right here. But however, on the right hand side of equations, you need to remember what you're distributing. So it will be plus 4 times 4, because this 4 in the black color is coming from this factor right here. Then I'm gonna try to complete the square for the y part, which is again b divided by 2 and squaring it. My y part will be -6 divided by 2 and square, which is -3 square is 9. So I'm adding 9 to right here, and on the right hand side I'm gonna be adding also 9, because that'll be plus 1 times 9, because the reason why is because in front of y factor is only 1. So finally, this gives us perfect square trinomial, which is 4x minus 2 quantity square plus y minus 3 quantity square equal to, you can use the calculator, or you can do the mental math. Negative 9 plus 9 will be 0, so it'll be 16. So finally, we're going to divide both sides by 16. 4x minus 2 quantity square divided by 16 plus y minus 3 square divided by 16. And on the right hand side, 16 divided by 16 is 1, because that's our main goal, to get 1. So finally, reducing a little bit, that will give me x minus 2 square is equal to 4 plus y minus 3 square equal over 16 equal to 1. So that tells us x minus 2 square over 2 to the second power for 4, y minus 3 square over 4 to the second power. So now that we get our standard form, we can talk about our center. My center in this case will be 2 and 3. The vertex will be, as usual, we're going to try to graph it first and then talk about the vertex from the graph. That's much easier for us. And don't forget your A and B, right? So this is your A and this is your B. So let's graph this. So my center is 2 and 3, which is right here, 2, 3. And then I'm gonna be moving left and right 2 units for the A part, because A is associating with the X. So left and right 2 units from the center. And then my B is 4 units up and down, so it will be go at 4 units, and it will be go down 4 units. So I will get my ellipse from here. Again, this ellipse is a vertical ellipse. So my vertex right here will be, this is my vertex, this is my vertex point, which is going to be 2, and then it will be 7 and 2, negative 1, and that will be my final answer. And this concludes this sections. You should also look at some example in your textbook, because somehow I choose both of the example that give me, like, a vertical ellipse. You need to look at one of the horizontal ellipse in your textbook example. Okay.